One of the team gave an interview to the New York Times not long ago in which he said, and it was truth, that everyone went to Italy expecting to set up their equipment, work for 15 minutes, pack up the equipment, and come back home. Today, the burden of proof is on the skeptic. That, too, is truth. Nobody funded us. We didn't get any money from the church. None of the trusts came through with anything substantial worth talking about. I started doing what I'm doing tonight almost 6 years ago, hitting every campus, every trust, every foundation that would let me in to talk, to try to raise a buck. Initially, houses got sold, cars are gone, television sets disposed of. The money went into a common kitty to pay the bills. You really have disappeared fast. You really haven't lived until you've seen a nuke from Los Alamos on his thumb because he hasn't got the price of a plane ticket and he sold his car. But he said, this is worth anything. We'll never in our life do anything bigger than this. He'd been in the Mariner space program, putting the team on the moon. He still thinks this is bigger. I do too. But that money disappeared very rapidly, but we paid for it with the $5, $10, $100 contributions of individuals. The labs, you all know them. Los Alamos Scientific, the world's biggest. They made the A-bomb. Pasadena Jet Propulsion, JPL. They're giving us the pictures coming back from Saturn, Jupiter, the spacecraft. The Air Force Academy at Colorado Springs. The Air Force Weapons Lab at Albuquerque. Brooks Institute of Photography, McCone Associates, Brookhaven National, half the universities. There's a paradox involved. It means absolutely nothing. But I think you have to admit it's a little bit different. Virtually every man and woman involved in this project is involved, one way or the other, in the development, the assembly, or the distribution of the bomb, working on the shroud of the Prince of Peace. As I said, it doesn't mean a thing, but it is a little weird. Those labs are merely where the people are working tonight. I'm talking, they're working. The military is not financing this, neither is the federal government. But I've said it on many a campus and overseas, I'm not the least little bit ashamed to be an American. Where else in the world could something like this happen? That we have the use of the most sophisticated equipment that the world has, assuming Russia doesn't have something better, and we doubt it, on a non-priority basis. That merely means that if the military isn't using a certain piece of equipment tonight, you can almost guarantee that someone on this team has it. Just do it on your own time, pay your own way, and for God's sakes, don't use military stationery. Where else but the States? I can't begin to tell you what they found. There simply aren't enough hours tonight. All I can do is give you an extremely quick overlook, something that might interest you. As early as 1898, an Italian attorney by the name of Secundapia took the first photograph of the cloth. He wrote that he almost fell out of his window when he developed his plate, because what should have been a negative turned out to be what we have here, a positive, proving that he had photographed a negative. Every time you take a picture, your new negative is the reverse of what you were looking at. Black becomes white, white is black. If he had a positive, he must have photographed a negative. Over the centuries, the image on the cloth had been described as vague, weak, indistinct, ephemeral, weird, made with unworldly colors. I'll buy the weird. It's only because light and shade are reversed. Black is white, white is black. More than 500 years before photography, the first photographic negative was not printed until 1857. This turned up in 1352. More than 500 years before photography, something had imprinted a photographic negative on a piece of linen cloth. When this team went to Italy in October of '78, over 50,000 photographs were taken. If you took a deep breath, somebody took a picture of it to record it. The pictures are a lot better than his, but all that anyone has proven is that Secundapia is right. The image is still a photographic negative. Mid-'70s, Air Force Weapons Lab, Albuquerque. A couple of teachers from the academy, John Jackson, Eric Jumper. Both had their doctorates, spatial physics, spatial engineering, captain, major, Mariner space program, using some semi-secure equipment, a VP-8 image analyzer. The thing had been developed to map the surface of Mars and for military surveillance. One night, John took a slide of his face, put it under the camera, projected it through the equipment, closed-circuit television, and both men have said many times they know exactly the way Secundapia felt when he developed his plate, because they almost literally got blown out of their chairs when the image came out three-dimensional. We don't know how to do that to anything. Science simply hasn't progressed that far. We know how to put it in, but we haven't learned, I beg your pardon, we know how to decode it, but we have yet to learn how to put it into anything, let alone a piece of linen cloth. They took their equipment and their technique down to JPL. They scanned this frontal image, the same way a TV picture is produced. Scan a line, jump, scan a line, jump. The computer began to produce strips bearing the configuration, the outline, the shape of the man in the cloth. John and Eric's wives and some other girls sat down with cardboard boxes and razor blades, traced the outlines out and cut them out. The girls have put together what, without any question, is the world's craziest jigsaw puzzle. 560 some pieces of cardboard. Assembled vertically, the computer had produced a three-dimensional image, you can call it a statue, of a man 5 feet 8 inches tall, mutilated almost beyond belief. And there's no other photograph on earth that you can do this with. At the very least, what we have here is the world's oldest and the world's strangest photograph. You see, that's why the work must go on. There simply are no real answers. The man in the shroud has no eyes. I suppose you'd say, as I did, that they were closed in death. That's what I thought. Some people think he's staring at them. But it was a mind bender in '78 when JPL enhanced the face to the degree that you could see that where the eyes should be are a pair of circular blank spots, button-like objects, until one of the archaeologists came up with the information that it was the custom of first-century Jews to put a pebble on the eyes of a dead man, to wait the lid shut until rigor mortis set in, to keep them from popping open. If they were wealthy, they might use a coin. These were approximately the size of a first-century coin. Joseph of Arimathea was wealthy. We know that he had money on his person. He had just purchased a piece of cloth with which to bury Jesus. Would he be willing to provide a couple of coins? Your guess is just as good as mine is. The team took an extremely sensitive camera to Italy, the same thing the astronauts have been carrying around the moon. Two of the bigger labs in this country each gave us $1 million worth of specially made film for the work. We'd become professional beggars, too. But it worked. And photographed the eyes. I double-talked it for over 2 years, trying to say it but not say it. I was itching. But now that Father Philas of Loyola has published his book, it amounts to a small paper, his paper I should say, it amounts to a small book copyrighted. I can quote him. He died just a short time ago, too, a month or so ago. We've got a rather high death rate in this project. But it's going to be controversial for a while to come. But now that Virginia Polytech is part of the picture, it might not take that long. You see, there are men who are going to tell you there's nothing there, simply because it's impossible to explain it. Why can you see the coins in the first place? There's no answer. Stranger yet, how can you read the markings? No answer. Why do they appear in some types of photography? In other types, there's nothing there. If there really were something there, you should be able to see it no matter what kind of film you're using. But that isn't the case. Yet there is something there. I couldn't possibly make it up. I've never seen a Judean lepton in my life before. I wouldn't know what to conjure up. You can't call it self-hypnosis. Yet we can read 7 out of 10 letters in sequence in the middle of the 2 words Tiberius Caesar. That's what it is, a Judean lepton, minted by a character named Pontius Pilate. The Bible refers to it as the widow's mite, the smallest coin ever minted in Israel. We found 3 of them in a museum down in East Point, Georgia. They look as if they've been cut out of a piece of bronze with a pair of tin snips. But the important thing is that depending on which numismatist, which coin expert you happen to be talking to, this particular lepton was in circulation for a maximum of either 3 years or 7 years. Take your choice. One man says 3, the other 7. But that only means that if whoever put those coins in his eyes was using a coin that was currently circulable, a coin that he could spend in the Stoa, the man in the shroud, whoever he might have been, appears to have died within a 7-year maximum of the 12th year of Tiberius Caesar. That's our AD 29. He died between the year 29 and 36, possibly between the year 29 and 32. How much closer would you like to try to get it? Let me tell you about the man. Once again, there is no name on the cloth, but you've all seen Quincy on television. If you haven't, your kids have. The forensic pathologist, the medical detective, the man who will take a corpse and tell you all there is to know about him. This work was done at Los Angeles Forensic by Dr. Bob Buckland. They have the rather dubious distinction of being the world's busiest. They get more corpses per hour than any other lab in the world. They know dead men. Philadelphia Forensic, Dr. John Gambicia. What I'm about to say is documented. The man in the shroud was a Jewish person. He was between 30 and 35 years old. He stood 5 feet 8 inches tall. He weighed approximately 155 pounds. He took one of the worst beatings the doctors have ever known a man to take and walk away from it.